Welcome to New Release Review, part of the Movie Friends podcast. My name is Seth. Today we're talking about Roadhouse from 2024, directed by Doug Liman. We will be discussing spoilers throughout this entire episode, so if you haven't seen Roadhouse 2024, or even maybe the other Roadhouse, I don't know, we're probably going to get into it. You might not want to listen to this, but what you definitely want to do is go watch both Roadhouses, preferably back to back. Then come back and listen to this. Today, super cool. I'm joined by not only one guest, but two. We've got Erin and Tom from Baby's First Watchlist podcast. Guys, what's going on? How are you?
Great.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm recovering from Roadhouse.
Takes a while.
Yeah.
A lot of CGI.
Yes. You guys have a pretty cool concept for your show. Can you guys kind of explain it for those who might not be familiar?
Sure. Tom, you can take it away with what our podcast is and maybe who we are in relation to each other even.
Yeah, so Erin and I are married, and we had our first child in 2022, July 2022, and we decided around that time that we were going to start a podcast because we love talking about movies with each other, with our friends, with everybody. And we decided that our podcast was going to essentially be either a list of movies that we want to show our sons one day. We have another one on the way. And or just a movie that we wanted to see that we hadn't checked out that we're going to watch, and we're going to decide whether or not we do want to show it to our sons and when. You know, how old we want them to be, what the type of content is. But it is generally just an excuse for us to have a structured time to talk about movies. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
And it's also sort of a time capsule for us to hopefully down the line be able to show to our kids, and they'll have lots of hours to listen to if they so choose. Right. You know, maybe be able to encourage that discussion with their opinions on the same movies.
More likely, though, they will be completely embarrassed of us having a podcast.
And never listen to any of it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I have a few kids, and what I always say is my Letterboxd account is primarily for my kids. Should they care if I, drop dead next year, boom, they'll have a whole bunch of information about what I liked, what I was into, what I hated. And so when people are like, oh, this sucks, I'm like, I don't really care because I'm not really doing it for you. So
Totally.
So what's your guys' experience with the original Roadhouse?
Well, I had never seen it before. We watched it for the podcast. I don't know, Tom, when was it that we watched it?
Sometime last year for the first time. I had watched it like a month prior for the first time, and then I was like, Erin, we got to watch this. This movie is ridiculous. It's insane. Yeah. It's Swayze. It's peak 1989 or whatever year it came out. And then we did it for the podcast, and loved it again on the second watch. So I've seen it probably 2-3 times now, and it's great. I love it.
I've always liked Patrick Swayze, but it really only saw his like Dirty Dancing ghost roles, and I was like fake into Donnie Darko when I was in high school. So I had seen those, but I was always interested in some of the other roles that he was known for, this and Point Break in particular. And so when we watched this, I was just like, yeah, this is hitting on everything for me. I truly loved it.
Yeah, I had heard about Roadhouse for many years and how horrible it is, and the Family Guy jokes, and I had a vague sense of someone getting their throat ripped out, you know?
Yes. Some of my favorite parts. I love that.
Yeah. And I think it came to streaming, and I had watched Dirty Dancing also for the first time a few years back, and I was completely blown away. I had no idea what the movie was actually about.
Yeah.
And Swayze, I don't really get too upset about celebrity deaths because it's like, I don't really know them. It's tragic when anybody dies. My favorite thing is when a celebrity who's like 93 passes away and the headline is like, tragically.
Yes.
Like no, naturally, expectedly,
right.
and deservedly so,
and
they have left this earth. Yes. But Swayze was one that was very upsetting, sad, died definitely way too young.
Mm-hmm.
And after watching Dirty Dancing, I was like, just the presence that he has, the kind of like calm control, but still charismatic, so I was just like all in. And then I watched Roadhouse and I was like, oh my gosh, this is not a bad movie. It's actually an incredible movie.
Yes.
It's hilarious, absurd, and has got a bad rap. And I'm so glad that I think people of our age, maybe in this time period, pretty much overwhelmingly are like, no, Roadhouse rules.
Yes.
It rules. That's it. Period.
Yeah. And there's a few movies that have been like that in my lifetime, like Showgirls. I always heard Showgirls is the worst film ever made, and then I watched it and I was like, this actually kind of rules.
I need to see Showgirls. It's been on my list since I was in high school, and I have never caught it, and I need to see it because I know it's camp. I know it's right up my alley. I cannot wait to see that.
Yeah. There's a few laughable scenes for sure, but Elizabeth Berkley, the physicality of what she does, I don't know how you can't have like heaps of respect for what she does. It's crazy. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Showgirls.
That's next time.
Not this time. Yeah, not this time.
Yeah, not this time. But remakes, people are generally angry about remakes. Last week, one of the contributors to our website put out an article about remakes and the Roadhouse remake and everything, and it was a really good article. I really appreciated how they laid it out. But it seems like whenever a remake is announced, everyone's first response is like, so not to put words in your mouth, but how do you guys feel?
When I saw that they were remaking Roadhouse, my initial thought was that was my initial reaction. And then I looked into it and I saw that Gyllenhaal was going to star, and I was like, he's probably not going to be the same thing as Swayze, and that's good. And I'm okay with that. And he wasn't.
Yeah.
And I like Gyllenhaal. So I was like kind of encouraged in a way. And I do think, I guess it's kind of a spoiler for what I thought about the movie, but it's not the worst remake I've ever seen. It's not the best remake I've ever seen, but it's definitely not the worst I've ever seen.
No, what I like about it is a sort of reimagining rather than a beat by beat remake. We don't need the Sam Elliott character. We don't need the same level of romance story that I think was the weakest part of the original Roadhouse. I like the different setting. I like that the climactic fight at the end is different than the one in the original. And I think that something like that, where they take the original, a lot of it is the same, but there are some different elements to it. I think that makes it more successful. And also, Roadhouse is not prestige cinema, so I'm okay with an Amazon Prime. You see Post Malone in the first scene and Conor McGregor is grimacing the entire movie. I'm into that. That's great for me.
Yeah, Conor McGregor is walking around in this movie like a toddler who's trying to pretend that they didn't poop.
Yes, literally, yes. We are dealing with that right now in our household. Yes.
Yeah, And I don't want to give Conor McGregor too much credit, because as far as I know, he's like a total sleazeball in real life. But the way that he walks, it's like, I don't know if he walks like that in real life, but for this character, they were like, no, you need to do that all the time.
100% of the time.
From my limited UFC exposure, I watched it a little bit back in the day, and he kind of does walk like that, but that's part of his character to walk like that. It was not surprising to me to see him walk like that this whole movie.
It was insane.
Yes.
I I said to Tom during the movie, sometimes you have to separate a man from his art, and
yeah.
meant very sarcastically. But in this case, it was interesting to see how McGregor took this role and was just like, yeah, I'm going to do the same thing the entire time.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to read every line exactly the same. I'm going to walk exactly the same. I'm going to smile exactly the same the entire time. And for me, I'm like, yeah, that works.
Not even going to try something different.
No. And you know what? No. More power to you.
Yeah. I think it works in the context of the movie, and it helped to bring this version of Roadhouse to a level of insanity. I think without McGregor doing that, you have a safer Roadhouse, which doesn't feel right.
Exactly.
It feels like the Point Break remake, which was nothing compared to the original.
I
have only 6 films rated half a star on my Letterboxd out of 3,700, and the Point Break remake is one of them. That was one of the most painful experiences I've ever had in a theater.
Illustrious company.
Oh my God.
And the original's so good.
It's fantastic.
It's fantastic.
It's really great. Yeah. On remakes, like they just announced that they're doing Neverending Story. They're going to do a new Neverending Story, and again, everyone's first response was like, "This is horrible." But as a lover of the book Neverending Story and the film, growing up as a kid, I watched the movie a ton, like I think most kids do. And then I read the book and I was like, oh my God, the movie is like the first chapter of the book. And there's like way more. Like Bastian actually goes into the world of Fantasia. It becomes like a Paul Atreides in Dune type situation. He becomes like an evil dictator kind of a thing. It's pretty because, he has superpowers and can create anything that he wants. And so it's an incredible journey, and I'm excited for an updated Neverending Story. And like Erin said, this doesn't feel like a direct copy. It just feels like a reimagining. Like, okay, let's take the story of a fighter protecting a bar, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
In some kind of like trashy location. It's not like a New York City like metropolitan bar. It's like we need to have that little bit of like blue collar clientele here.
Right. And not to give this movie an incredible amount of credit, but putting them like on the very far edges of like the Florida Keys feels the closest to perhaps like outside of civilization that you could get in 2024 in America. People are kind of going there. They're on vacation. Yes, there are like locals, but you get a sense of like passing through and not fake identities, but like people are on vacation. They're not in their hometown, and so they can behave differently. And I don't know. Yeah, I liked it. So for me, just kind of general, I enjoyed this. I don't think it's an incredible movie, but I love Jake Gyllenhaal. I'll watch him in anything, and I've watched him in just about everything. And very rarely has he disappointed. And I thought, watching him be weird and beat people up for 2 hours, yeah, absolutely, I'll do that.
I am also a Jake Gyllenhaal fan. I do have one movie where I literally hated his performance. Tom, do you know what movie it is?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, you guess, Seth.
Okay, so you hated his performance. Did you hate the movie?
No. I didn't love the movie, but I liked it. And it's
I have 2 guesses.
Movie. Okay.
One is Nightcrawler.
I loved him in Nightcrawler.
Oh, okay. And 2 is Bubble Boy.
Well, I mean, is that a good movie? I don't think that's a very good movie.
I would defend Bubble Boy.
You would defend it? It is not either one of those. Tom, what movie was it?
Is Okja?
It was Okja.
Is that how you pronounce that word? I forget. I haven't watched the movie in a long time.
I hated every single choice he made in that movie. And it was after, and it was, and it was a choice. And you know what? I respect that. But I loved every choice he made in Nightcrawler. And I was like, he's wild. Like, wow. And I've been a Jake Gyllenhaal fan for many, many years. And then I saw Oakja and I'm like, oh no, I didn't like that so much. But you know what? I kind of respect that. He's making choices and he's doing it the way he wants to. And I appreciate that, which is why I loved his casting here in Roadhouse. And I like that he took it in his own direction with that smirk, with that kind of jokiness that I think, you know, was so different than Swayze's Zen character.
Yes.
And I was a little nervous. I'm like, Gyllenhaal, I don't think could do the Zen like that. And he didn't even try. And I think that was to the movie's benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. My other thought is that we were watching, I would say, like most of the first act, and we were like, this is pretty brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, the Post Malone segment in the beginning with him fighting, but him also singing in the song in the background.
Yes.
It was like
singing over himself.
This is Post Malone overload right now. Once we got through that, we got through like kind of all the pointlessness of the exposition in the beginning, the bookstore stuff. But then really, I started to kind of get into it, and then really, once the thing with the bookstore happens and he just goes insane, like once that hit through the end, I was all the way in. I thought it was a great like third act.
Yeah it's surprising. It's very
it is.
I did not expect for him to go full sicko mode.
Yeah, I was shook at that point. I'm just like, oh wow, this is, and then it just turns very dark, and then he's buying ice, you know, and I'm like, oh, and then he's like threatening the police officer, and I'm like, oh, like it takes a whole shift that I think really works with the casting of Jake Gyllenhaal, because you think of like Prisoners and you think like, and you're like, yeah, he can go there. And I just thought that was so interesting.
Yeah. Yes. And that they committed to it. It's not like a flash of anger. I agree. I thought getting stabbed in the stomach and then kind of like handling that was interesting. And I was like, okay, wow. All right. We're going a little, I think the biggest turnoff for me initially, and I did come around on it, not fully in love, but I came around on it. And what I'm seeing a lot of people comment on are how they used CGI assistance in the fights. I don't know how to describe it.
I didn't love it.
It's another thing about this movie that is a choice for sure.
They don't cut, so the camera doesn't cut, but they look like full CGI body characters for like half a second at a time as their bodies are moving through where the cut would be, and then it resumes them as real people. It's interesting. It doesn't look great.
No.
But what I had said was, once I realized like this is what it looks like and this is what it's going to look like, I just kind of got over it. And I was just like, I accept it. Like I said, I don't love it. It looks weird, but okay, this is what it's going to look like.
Yeah, well, I don't like the CGI either. And Tom, we talked about it throughout the movie where it was just like, ugh.
Yeah. It was just kind of unnecessary. I feel like part of what I like about the original Roadhouse is just how kind of scrappy and down and dirty it is.
Yeah.
And I feel like you don't get that same effect with CGI.
Glossed over.
No. It allows them to have superhero fights on a very street level. And in the beginning of the movie, someone refers to Dalton as a superhero, right? And then the bookstore, I feel like the character of Charlie is primarily there as like the audience proxy to be like commenting on things as we're thinking of them. And so she's like, this is like a Western. And we're like, this is like a Western. And if we think about it like Yojimbo or Fistful of Dollars, it's basically that, just showing how killing people in the end is very like cold and violent and kind of insane. And so it's like taking that same trope, but we don't feel like, hooray, the hero. We're like, oh, he's crazy.
Yeah. Well, they literally say that at the end when he's like, I don't think I'm the hero the hero of the story. And she's like, well, you're not the villain either. Like, all right, thank you. We didn't really need that, but appreciate it.
Right. But you know what though? Sometimes for people who aren't fully adept in like the language of cinema,
right?
You know, it's not so bad that they're spelling it out, but they're fully spelling it out for you here. But yeah, I also didn't love the bookstore thing, Greg the Tree, and but you know what? In 10 years, Greg the Tree might be a beloved line. Who knows? You know,
I'm
just happy that my guy Kevin Carroll, the dad, who's from The Leftovers, I'm happy to see him getting work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I liked all of the little characters. The bartender who comes down when he's in his underwear. I liked her. The love interest, I was like, you know, like you guys mentioned, the love plot line of the original Roadhouse, it's kind of not the greatest. And this felt like, okay, you know, tying in with the sheriff and yeah. How did you guys feel about the music being like actually being played and interrupted by the fights and the amount of the music? How'd you guys feel about that?
We actually did talk about this. How I wished that there was, just like in the original, one band. I wanted one thing. And is it Jeff Healey Band?
Jeff Healey Band, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I loved that he was a character in the story in the 1989 version. I love that he you know, was behind the cage the whole time and was playing his music. And I thought he was
just friends with Dalton.
Yeah, randomly just friends with Dalton. I love that. And I found that not having that in this one kind of took away from it. I wish that there was sort of one band, one character that could have been in it. But the music was good, and they had like a random like Enter Sandman version in there.
Yeah.
Oh, that was awesome.
Random.
Yeah. I feel like in my lifetime, Enter Sandman has gone on such a journey from being like this great epic song to being this like lame song that like your metalhead friends are obsessed with. Yeah, to non-existence, and then all the way back around to the end of Roadhouse where it kicks on, and you're like, oh yeah. And it was cool to experience that in that moment, and where I was like, they're really doing Enter Sandman, and then I was like, actually, this is perfect.
Yes.
Like this is hilarious. This is a great choice,
and it felt very UFC.
Mm-hmm. It did, like entrance music on.
We got WrestleMania coming up. Why not? You know.
So, like Erin mentioned, we don't really do philosopher Dalton in this, which is what I was kind of looking forward to, because that was one of my favorite parts of the original Roadhouse, was like just hearing him train the other bouncers and talking about like the psychology behind why they do everything that they do. And you know, he's constantly reading, and I love that. And we really don't get a lot of that almost at all. And I was surprised at kind of how it worked. So the difference with Dalton in this one is his motivations are because of accidentally killing his friend in the rain. So how did you guys feel about that backstory for Dalton?
Knowing the Gyllenhaal casting, I think it makes sense, because you have a guy who was in Southpaw, right? He was the lead in Southpaw. He was in like Zodiac. He was in Nightcrawler. He's in all these types of movies where that type of kind of mournful type of character or like angry type of character, I think sort of tracks with him. If he had tried to do the be nice until it's time to not be nice from the Swayze. I don't think that hits the same way from Gyllenhaal as it does from Swayze. I do wish that I love that too. That's one of my favorite parts of the original is just the way that Swayze delivers those lines and how like pseudo philosophical, but also actually philosophical he is, kind of at the same time. And I, not that I dislike the Gyllenhaal casting for this context, but I think if that were the way that they wanted to go with it, it would have had to have been somebody else. But what Gyllenhaal did, in his backstory, I don't know if I necessarily buy him as a UFC fighter either. His ears look too nice. But I do think that he is good enough of an actor to play that type of like edgy type of character.
Yeah.
I wish there was one more scene of connected to that backstory. I felt like something was missing there. And it was like, oh, he killed him. Oh, now he's gonna go off and kill all these people. I just wanted a little bit more background or motivation behind it. And
maybe if they had explored the friendship a tiny bit.
Yeah, I think something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, or you see anything involving the fallout of that happening. You know, I don't know how UFC works. If you kill someone in the ring, are you liable? Like, you know what I mean? I don't even know if that's ever happened.
As far as I know, it hasn't. But
yes.
Tom's a lawyer, so Tom, does that count? Is that like, I don't know, is that involuntary manslaughter?
As a lawyer, I would say, based on everything that every lawyer would ever say, it depends on the contract.
Okay.
It depends on what they waived. It depends on everything like that.
Sure.
But my guess is that they probably wouldn't be personally liable unless it was something that was like completely out of bounds. Like he stabbed them in the locker room or something like that. But in the ring, I'm not sure that there would be anything like that. I'm sure that UFC would be, you know, and I'm surprised they actually put their logo on that. Just because it seems like a little bit of not great publicity in a sport that already doesn't get great publicity.
Right. Hey, a guy could snap and keep. But I mean, in Dalton's defense, I don't know why I'm defending him, but he's punching the guy. Like that's what you're supposed to do, right? Like that's what would happen. And then the ref kind of comes in.
The ref was late,
so I feel like, yeah. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm a movie guy talking about fighting.
He did then push the referee away and continue to punch him in the face. But you know, it is what it is.
At that point, sure, yeah.
Well, and then there is this interesting thing of sort of when you just snap or you go red or like and then having to now be someone who has to be in control at all times. It's kind of interesting to see that and how anyone in this moment, especially when you go into the context of traditional masculinity and how that's almost expected within this sport, and now he has to kind of do the opposite, and it's kind of interesting how then when he sort of snaps again,
sicko
you don't get, and he goes sicko mode. You don't get that, oh my God, he's just going off. Now it seems calculated. So it's kind of interesting how it kind of ebbs and flows.
He was literally explaining the like muscles and stuff that he had just and bones that he had just broken to people as he was doing it.
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. It's very like Hannibal Lecter throughout the movie, where at first you're like, oh, haha, that's cool. Yeah, you're going to break those fingers. Aha, you're going to do this. But then when he starts using it and it's like to kill people, you're like, oh, this is really, really scary. And I don't know the intention behind that. I just know the effect. And I loved it. Like I loved like examining, like I said, you watch Yojimbo and you watch Fistful of Dollars and you watch Magnificent Seven, and all you see are the people that they're protecting, right? And therefore anything that hero character does is justified because they're the hero. And for so long, a hero in like American films is defined by a man who goes beyond the law or what's expected in civilization, using strength to do what he believes is right. And that is time and time again, right? If you're a police officer, you got to forget about what your commanding officers are saying and you got to take control for yourself. And there's if you do the right thing, in the end, it will all work out. And even if you get in trouble, it's just adding on to the sacrifice that you've already made, right? And that's what it is. And in recent years, we've started to like deconstruct that and look at it. And I think, not to give Roadhouse too much credit, but I think that this is like a fascinating look at that. And when he makes that switch, like, what do you feel inside? And I'm not 100% that people's like adverse reaction to this isn't due in part to them not wanting to have that icky feeling. Yeah. Anyway, so
wait, is Roadhouse amazing?
Did they just take the philosophy and put it into the actual film?
I wonder. That's actually fascinating.
He was nice until it was time to not be nice when they blew out the bookstore.
Right. Be nice until it's time to be on ice. As a big fan of Game Night, I was very excited to see Billy Magnussen.
Yes. He was great.
The scene where he's getting shaved on the boat. How did you guys feel about him in this as the villain?
At first, I was not as into it because I really liked the original kind of
the Ben Gazzara character.
Yeah, like suave car salesman type, whatever, but like cold as ice. But Tom, you made a really good point when we were watching it by the end about him.
I strangely thought that he was maybe the most compelling character in the movie. I mean, Gyllenhaal as Dalton is interesting for all the reasons that we've talked about, but he clearly hates what he's doing. He does not want to be doing the job that he's doing. It's entirely brought on from the external pressure of his dad, who, sicks Conor McGregor on this entire village, or town, area, island, and you never even see him. He's just kind of this ghost, this specter hanging over the whole movie, and you can tell that just by the way that he sent Knox McGregor into the area to fix up, what was his name? Brandt, his son's mess. You can tell that the Billy Magnussen Brandt was not treated well as a child. I'm sure that there was a lot of stress in that relationship and that dynamic. And I don't know, for some reason it just randomly clicked with me. And I was like, why am I feeling this way about the over the top villain of a freaking Roadhouse remake?
Right.
Like, I don't know. I just thought it was I don't know if I would have wanted more time with the character to explore it a bit more. I don't know if it would have been worth that, but I think that there's like nuggets of really interesting facets to that character.
Yeah. And what I like about him is that a lot of what he does, says, and acts like is slightly off. He's whiny, and you're like, you shouldn't be whiny. You're the boss. And then he wears these outfits like Miami Vice type, and it's like, it doesn't look quite right on you, as Jessica Williams' character says. And so it's kind of interesting that he's trying to be this guy that we're thinking is probably who his dad was, but is not quite living up to that. Billy Magnussen was probably the quarterback of his football team. That's what he's baby faced. And so when he's trying to be this like tough dude and wear these cool suits and whatever, it just doesn't quite fit. And I really like those choices. Because Roadhouse is the best movie ever made, weirdly.
I kind of like it as contrast to Dalton, too, because Dalton's been pushed. You could say how much of it is actually him and how much of it was him being pushed, but he's pushed to this point where he literally is going, he's just murdering people now. Like, Billy Magnussen is kind of already there when we meet him. Like, he's already been pushed past what probably a good version of that character would look like. And we're getting, for the entirety of the runtime that we see him, he's already way, way long gone. But I think that just the little nuggets that we get in like little dialogue that he's an interesting character, if not a good person, for sure.
I really like the choice of having such an unceremonious death for him, which I felt was very kind of in tune with what the character's supposed to be, right? He's overtaken by his dad this whole time, who now's in jail. You don't see him. But now, okay, Conor McGregor comes in and he becomes the villain. Wait a second, I thought I was going to be the big villain. And I thought that was really, really interestingly done.
Well, and then just really quickly, there's also that sort of symbolic aspect of the guy that his dad sent to clean up ended up just killing him. Kind of like, he ran him down with a truck. And then he ended up killing. Like it's kind of there's some sort of symbolism there too.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Jessica Williams as Frankie. She is, as the movie, explaining the movie to us, which is like, yeah, like, hey, you don't look good in that, and he thinks that because he traveled to Italy to get the suit, then that is what's important. Where with clothes, all that matters is how it looks. Nobody cares. You know, if you're wearing something that costs $1 million and you look ridiculous, what difference does it make? But to him, it's the $1 million that matters.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that he was very entertaining. He managed to, maintain the twinkle in his eye that we love him for as he's getting shaved on the deck and as he's probably like one of the more sinister moments when he's showing him the video of when he killed his friend, and he doesn't do anything beyond just hurt him. Like there's no point to what he does. He doesn't say, okay, now here's my offer. He doesn't say, I'll see you next time. Like he doesn't incite him to act in that moment. All he does is he goes there to hurt him. And that's pretty evil.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that he was great.
I also liked when he got sent like 300 feet in the air off of that boat onto the thatched roof.
I thought he was dead at that point. I was like, wow, okay, goodbye. Bye. See you later. Yeah, pretty amazing that he survived. So as Elwood Dalton's love interest, we have Daniela Melchior as Ellie. I did not recognize her from Suicide Squad. She played Ratcatcher 2 in James Gunn's Suicide Squad. No idea that this was the same person until I looked up the credits after. Yeah. How did you guys feel about her?
You know what? It's so interesting. When I was growing up, I was all about the romantic subplots in movies. And now as I watch, I couldn't care less, honestly, about a lot of them. And this is one where like, I don't need the romance. I thought she was serviceable and fine. And I thought that the element with her dad was interesting. Meh.
It reminded me of kind of like a Fast and Furious romance. And it was like, do we really need this? Not really. And she was okay. But...
Yeah, we don't get too romantic with the two of them. That is what I will say. Like,
yeah,
we don't end up together really. Like, she's used, in the final conflict, she's used as a prisoner, but I don't think that he like grabs her and he's like, I love you,
Right.
So yeah, I think they did kind of hold back on a lot of that, which was good. Yeah, I thought she was good, but maybe just not as big. Her performance just wasn't as big as everyone else's is, and so she kind of gets lost a little bit in the shuffle. But
I do think it's interesting that her character does something that's decidedly different than Kelly Lynch's character in the original, where Kelly Lynch sees Dalton kill all these people and is like, all right, let's go swimming. Like, yeah. And here Ellie's like, yeah, you gotta go. Like, just go.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a maybe more 2024 choice for that female character to make. And so I liked that change.
Yeah. We already kind of talked about the fights. I did end up liking the fights because it felt like we're all done with superhero movies for the most part. Like I think I might have been the only person on earth who really liked the Marvels.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, we haven't seen a lot of Marvel movies.
Yeah.
I think that they are taking really like superhuman fights and putting it into, like I said, like street level stuff, bar brawls. You don't need to cut the camera because that's not really Jake Gyllenhaal slamming down onto the pavement face first. And when I think about it like that, I was kind of more impressed of like, well, if you're not cutting, how did you do that? Like how, I mean, yeah, it's CGI. Like I get how they did it, but yeah, I don't know. I'm like caught halfway between not wanting to be a Roadhouse 2024 CGI fight defender and also being like, if they can make it look a little bit better, I would be, this might be the first step in what will become normal, I guess, later on. And I just hope it looks better.
Not everything could be Jurassic Park.
Right.
When it first started up and came out. But like, I also wasn't a huge fan of it. The one thing I did like about the fights that I wish maybe it wouldn't have worked if they did it more, but there was like maybe like a 3-second portion of the movie when Dalton is fighting Conor McGregor, and it's just a first-person view of Conor McGregor punching the camera. Like, not that I needed a ton of that, but like actually kind of almost feeling like you're in the octagon with Conor McGregor for a second was like kind of a cool like twist on that version of the fight. And it didn't really require CGI as much. They
do a little bit of that in the first Post Malone fight. And I think that starting with that fight and being like, here's the visual style, that's a risk. And I don't know that I don't know if you don't have like goodwill in your heart towards this movie, if you can recover from that,
Right. It did feel very Doug Liman to me, though, with the Bourne series under his belt, and then I thought some of the kind of quirky lines and stuff. Didn't he do Swingers back in the day?
He did.
So it's kind of fun, like a combining of his different career choices and moves over the years. And I did find that the CGI, although I didn't love it, I was very engaged. And I know he was not happy that this didn't get a theatrical release.
Yes.
And I do wish that I saw this in a theater with a lot of people, because I think that there would be a very fun audience for this. And I feel like word of mouth after people going out of it and being like, oh my gosh, that was so fun, because it is a fun movie to watch, would lead to something more than people just watching it in their living rooms.
Yeah, I agree completely. There are movies that I mean to see in theaters, due to circumstances I don't. And then when I watch them at home, I'm like, no, this would have been incredible to see with people laughing. And it sucks that they didn't get the theatrical release. And there were some really funny one-liners during the final fight when they're on the piano and Dalton says, this piano's out of tune. And McGregor says, it sounds fine to me. I was like, that's such a funny throwback to the terrible one-liners of the 80s and 90s action movies. And it's so cheesy, but how I don't know, like, how can you not see that and know that it's intentionally stupid?
Right, exactly.
Especially like it reminded me of the line that I literally said out loud when Ellie was looking at Dalton's like wound in his side and he was like refusing medical attention. I just said, pain don't hurt, which is one of my favorite lines from the 89 one. Like, it's so good. I love those types of lines. And I wish that they're like, for as much as I really liked the last act of this movie, I wish it was more of that in the early going. I thought it took a little bit to sort of get moving. But once it did, and you got like that piano line, and you got Billy Magnussen flying 400 feet onto a thatched roof, like that's the kind of stuff I signed up for.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we got there eventually, but I wish that there were more of those types of one-liners earlier on.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think if you let the movie do its thing, and you sit and you finish it, then you'll get everything that you kind of came for. I think that you can cut a little bit here and there, make this a little more, aerodynamic.
Yeah, streamlined.
When it comes to the final fight and they're just pulverizing each other and Dalton is stabbed, I was like, okay, how does he get out of this one? I've seen this 1,000 times. How is he going to do this here? And I did not expect at all of the wood piece stabbings. I mean, I was like jumping out of my seat at that part. What did you guys think?
That and the thatched roof, I thought, were some of the best uses of this setting, which was one of my favorite parts of the original. How it sort of, the whole movie, Dalton was almost secondary to the setting, and I didn't think you got as much of that. I didn't think you got that established as much in this one. You have the bar, you have a little bit of that, but from the beginning, you're following Dalton. There's at least a scene or two in the original after the opening where you're at the Double Deuce and you're just getting like the creepy men hitting on the women. Like you're getting that type of stuff with the band playing in the background. You don't really get that in this one, but without Dalton in the context. But Dalton, like they saved it a little bit in the end there, like by using something like the wood pieces and the, you know, Billy Magnussen being saved by this very specific type of architecture that is not only in the Florida Keys, but is characteristic of the Florida Keys. And I just thought that it was really well done. It was a fun way to end that final fight.
Yeah.
With Enter Sandman playing, of course.
Yeah. Did you guys have any other thoughts that we didn't talk about?
No, but I honestly love that we're coming into this with that open mind, and that it I feel like a lot of times people go into it, like you said, with remakes being automatically Debbie Downers about it. And I think there's something to be said for going into a movie just like, look, you're just in it for a good time. I feel like I like to watch movies, period. I don't feel like I ever have wasted time with it. I don't know. We saw Irish Wish a couple days ago, and that was rough. But but I feel that was really rough. But I feel like, you know, you go into it, you're just there to be entertained in this case. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it ended up being a fun one.
There are two things that I have written down here that we did not mention. One of them is we didn't even mention the fact that a guy got eaten by a crocodile in this movie.
Oh yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That I saw it coming because they had talked about it, but I didn't see it coming at the point that it happened.
Oh yeah, when they mentioned it, I was like, oh, there's Chekhov's gun over there. We're gonna see that croc pop back up. And we did, yay!
I thought that McGregor was gonna get eaten by a crocodile at the end, but he did not.
Okay.
But the other thing is that Conor McGregor in this movie is naked like at least two times.
Yes.
It's like it's almost like it's like Terminator-esque. Like when you first see Arnold Schwarzenegger in all the Terminator movies, he's always naked and he's beating up bikers or whatever to get clothes. Like that was exactly the same thing that was happening here. And I'm sure that was probably, you know, something that they were making reference to. But
maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's not that deep. But yeah, I mean, those two things are two of the more insane things in the movie, and we didn't even touch on them.
No, I think that the Terminator thing is apt. Like, we're not comparing it in terms of quality or importance, but it does bring back, you know, a certain memory that you might have in terms of action films. And yeah, I even thought the little tag at the end, I don't know if you guys saw that with him in the hospital. McGregor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was like, this is so stupid, silly, stupid. I just kind of laughed. I was like, okay, whatever. Yeah, here's, you know, here he is again, naked and walking around like a duck. And yeah, he's smiling. He's unstoppable. And yeah, so, but I don't know. Yeah. Still smiling. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, guys. This was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I feel better about the movie after talking about it. So where can people find you guys online?
So we are on, let me get this right, Instagram, YouTube, Threads, and TikTok at Baby's First Watchlist. And we just made a letterboxd for the podcast at BFW Podcast, because apparently Baby's First Watchlist is too many characters for a username on Letterboxd.
Got it.
We just log the movies and link all of our episodes over there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Very cool. Very cool. If you're listening to this, definitely check them out. Very good observations, I will say. Of the episodes that I've listened to, there's always like some very smart nuggets and things. As someone who's watched movies my whole life, and I know tons and tons of trivia, there are things that get brought out in your guys' episodes where I'm like, oh, that is very smart and very, very interesting. So if you're listening to this, definitely give them a follow. Check them out. If you don't, you hate babies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is okay. There's plenty that they do that makes you hate them. So it is what it is.
That's right. Yeah, we've been loving babies too long, I think. It's time we really put them in their place. Hey, if you're listening to this, we'd love it if you'd give us a rating and a review. You don't have to, honestly. No one's going to check or anything. But if you did, you can go to sleep tonight thinking to yourself, my entire day went by, and what did I really contribute to society? Did I really have an effect on anyone? Am I just a cog in the machine? And then you can stop and say, wait a minute. I reviewed Movie Friends podcast 5 stars because they also loved Roadhouse. Maybe not loved it, but they didn't crap all over it. Yeah, love the original. That's right. You can also send us an email, moviefriendspodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. We would really love to hear if you watched Roadhouse and what you thought about it. Am I giving them way too much of a pass on the CGI thing? Should we bring Conor McGregor to justice for his crimes against humanity instead of celebrating his contribution to Amazon's film? I don't know. You let me know. Anyway, thanks, guys. Thank you guys very much. This was great. Look forward to whatever we do together next. You guys come back anytime, right?
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Not any time because I'll be giving birth soon. So no, but almost any other time.
That you're going to have plenty of time on your hands then.
Yeah, no problem.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you very much for listening. Until next time, have a good one.
Movie Friends is produced by Seth Vargas and Michelle Rubenstein. Music by Anthony Pecora. If you like the show, please subscribe and give us a rating. It really helps us find new friends. Thanks.